Press secretary smites Fox host that dissed diversity in the U.S. military. You might be wondering, why is Buck reading a headline from the comments or from a blog post at slate.com or HuffPost or one of these other lunatic left-wing garbage heaps? But no, that's actually from defense.gov. That's actually on a government news website. We have to get into this right now. We've got our friend Kurt Schlichter joining us. He spent decades in the United States military, still active in the Army Reserve, and he's a senior columnist at TownHall.com. You should always look for his work. Kurt, great to see you again.
So I feel unleashed and able to tell the truth, like Tucker did, despite the fact that the generals and the brass don't like to hear it.
So here's at the heart of this. The United States military, quote, is the greatest the world has ever seen because of its diversity, Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby said during a news briefing. Kirby addressed this because a Fox cable host used his show to denigrate the contributions of women in the military and to say the Chinese military is catching up to the U.S. military because it does not allow women to serve the percentage in the United States does. I want to be very clear up front, Kirby said. Diversity of our military is one of our greatest strengths. I've seen it for myself in long months at sea and the combat waged by troops in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I've seen it right. Yada yada yada. Okay. First of all, why is an employee of the DoD, Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby, attacking Tucker Carlson? Like, why spend his time doing that? Is he a pundit?
It's because what his masters want done. Look, if Donald Trump's people had did it, this would have been the greatest assault on free speech in the history of assaults on free speech. It would have been literally violence. I'd be literally shaking. You'd be literally shaking. The whole world would be literally shaking. But remember, Buck, there are no rules. There's just power. And unfortunately, they have it now, and they're using their power to neuter the American military. The thing is, Tucker called them on it. He told the truth, and they don't want to hear it. Now, to actually discuss this, I have to put on my trial lawyer hat, because this is a little bit of sleight of hand argument-wise. Tucker said, hey, the American military is an unserious organization because we're focusing on things like maternity flight suits and transsexual surgery. This is indisputably true. The Chinese are focusing on killing Americans, which is also indisputably true. Now, they don't want to talk about that because it's indisputably true. So what they want to do is lie and pretend that Tucker is running down the contributions of women in the military. That is, again, a lie, and it's a lie told by people who have failed to win a war in the last 20 years. I think that's a much bigger issue than anything else. And
now, how does social justice, I mean, the social justice focus that the Pentagon brass have, what are the ways in which, I mean, you mentioned like maternity flight suits. I mean, essentially, what is the, Tucker was making the argument as he admitted he's not somebody who's served in the military, but he's obviously in contact with a lot of people who are, and he's a commentator, and that's what he's doing. He's sharing his view on what's happening. I also think that, this is a fascinating new standard where the United States military now, when it comes to Tucker Carlson, if you didn't serve, you're not allowed to have opinions on it, right? I mean, it's supported by tax dollars. It defends all of us. But what is the case in your mind that Tucker is making? I mean, what do we need to be aware of?
Well, Tucker is accurately pointing out that our military is concerned with social justice nonsense, because that's what it is, and not winning wars. Okay, let's review the last 20 years. And I think this is a significant point. I made it on Twitter last night, and most of leftist Twitter collectively wet itself. I pointed out that Tucker has won as many wars as our present military leadership has in the last 2 decades, but Tucker has actually lost fewer wars than our present military leadership has in the last 2 decades. And they don't want you to talk about that. The American military is not ready to fight China. Instead, it's chasing its tail with nonsense about quote unquote diversity, which I want to come back to in a second, and all this social justice garbage, because that's what it is. Let me tell you what diversity is in the military. Diversity is everybody wearing camouflage, okay? It shouldn't be an issue. Who you are shouldn't matter. Now, capabilities do matter, and there are realities of differences between men and women that need to be taken into account and need to be discussed. Women and men are different. It doesn't say anything bad about women, and I resent the implication that somehow pointing out that a 100-pound woman is going to have trouble carrying a 100-pound backpack is somehow an attack on her patriotism. Let me tell you, Buck, when I was a platoon leader in Desert Storm, I ran a heavily armed car wash. So I'm wondering if I'm allowed to speak since I wasn't in Delta Force, but we'll just assume I fit within the rules of who can talk about the military for now. When I was there, I had a female squad leader who had a photosensitive skin disease, which she hid. Now, that's a big problem when you're in the desert, but she hid it because she wanted to be with her troops. I had to send her home. Her heart, unquestioned. Her patriotism, unquestioned. Her courage, unquestioned. And no one's questioning any of that. And it's a lie to get us talking about that instead of the reality that we are trading combat readiness for political correctness. That is indisputable. Tell me we're not slamming destroyers into cargo ships. We are. Tell me we're not driving pilots out of the Air Force. We are. Tell me all American brigade combat teams are ready to deploy. They aren't.
Now, there was a story that I saw as well this week, Kurt, that was a war game exercise. I'm sure you saw this too, about how it would go right now if the U.S. had to fight a straight up force on force war against China, not a cyber war, a guns going boom boom war, and it didn't come out well for the U.S.
No, it didn't, and they don't want to talk about that. The simple fact is the Chinese have built up their military. We have weakened ours. We have weakened ours because we have gotten away from the basics of military leadership and military culture. I consider the fact that we have not built up our Navy to be a critical fact. I think a worse fact for America is that we have not demanded that the officer corps focus on war fighting instead of this political correct garbage. I mean, we've got Raytheon's own Lloyd Austin is now the Secretary of Defense, and his big thing is making sure everybody thinks exactly the same way, just like Joe Biden. Well, to the extent Joe Biden thinks and isn't told what he thinks, and rooting out conservative people within the military. They call them extremists. That's another lie. But what the military should be doing is preparing to deter our enemies or defeat them in high-intensity combat. It is not ready to do so. This failure of leadership, and I'm terrified of this, Buck, this failure of leadership is going to lead to a disastrous engagement where thousands of Americans die unnecessarily because they are not well-trained, not well-equipped, and not well-led. I am not happy to say this. I am not excited to say this. This makes me sick to my stomach. And you know what also tears me up? After 27 years in the military, and I loved it, I no longer recommend people join the military. Somebody says, should I join the military? I'm like, stop. You need to really think. If you do, that's great. Do I think the military is a organization that's going to treat you correctly? No, I don't. I do not think it is.
How did this, and we're talking to Kurt Schlichter, he's a senior columnist at TownHall and an Army veteran. So, Kurt, how did we get to this point in your estimation where you're now saying this? I mean, this has got to be, for somebody who spent over 2 decades serving, this has got to be something that's tough for you to say. And I know there are others, I've even talked to you with others who are military present where we were discussing this, who feel very much the same way. I'm sure you're talking to guys who are on the inside, guys and gals who are on the inside of the DOD who feel this way. How did we get to this point and how do we get out of it?
Well, look, Buck, troops do what commanders check. And in the Obama administration, they made it very clear that you needed to toe a liberal line, and they promoted liberal generals. And people down the line understood that, and that's what they enforced. So now you see these, bizarre reading lists, for of all these commanders, and it's all full of this racist garbage. The Beverly D'Angelo.
So they're doing anti-racism training for 4-star generals is now necessary.
Yeah,
that's
garbage. And they all do it. And why did they do it? Because that's what was rewarded in the Obama administration. Why didn't Trump do anything about it? Because, unfortunately, like many civilians, he was impressed by the military and deferred to the generals and didn't go in and change it. This could change tomorrow. This could change in a heartbeat. You need a conservative president, calls in the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and says, here's how it's going to be. And if it isn't, I'm firing you. And then I'm going to fire everybody in the chain of command. And I'm going to retire you or send you to Nome, Alaska to hand out volleyballs. And you put a couple figurative heads on pikes, and the military will conform. That's the thing. That's why it's vulnerable. It is a military conforms to the vision of its leaders. If the vision of the leaders is social justice nonsense, then that's what the military is going to be. If it's combat readiness, it will come back. So I'm hoping we get a president who is quite willing to demand that we have a warfighting organization and fire generals until he gets one. And believe me, you kick a few of these guys out and put them to pasture, the rest of the generals will conform.
Kurt Schlichter, everybody. Go to townhall.com for his latest column. Follow him on social. Kurt, always appreciate it, man. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, man.
Hey, Team Buck, thank you so much for watching The First on YouTube. If you like this video, please click that little thumbs up button so then it will log as liked. And also, if you want to see more great content from The First, please click subscribe.